Hey guys, in today's video I wanted to show you a little bit of the process behind of how I package my orders. But before we get into the video, I just wanted to remind you guys about the resin safety precautions. You should always wear a mask when working with resin and gloves, and also if possible to work in like a well ventilated area like a porch or with your window wide open. And yeah, I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of how I package my orders. Unfortunately, I was out of the usual packaging that I have because I try to be as green as possible. My packaging is usually mostly paper and I avoid plastic as much as I can. But unfortunately, I run out of my usual packaging, and I had this leftover like transparent gift wrap film, so I thought instead of throwing it away I would use it, and it actually turned out really cute. And in this video I also wanted to give you guys a few resin tips for beginners, because I had a few comments asking me if I could make a video on more of the basics of resin, and I will make a more in-depth video in the future, but I thought I would share a few of my favorite tricks on this video. Well, starting out, something that a lot of people ask me is which resin do you use, or how do I pick my resin, how do I choose, there are so many options. Well, first of all, you should look locally in either your country or your continent, because as close as possible it's going to be as cheap as possible. If you order from the United States and you live in Europe, it's going to be really expensive, so you just have to look around and you have to try a few of them and see which one you like best, because some of them are thicker, some of them are thinner, and some of them have more bubbles, some of them have less bubbles, some of them are more expensive, so you just have to try out and see which one you really like. Another big tip that I have is to make sure that you read all the instructions on the resin that you buy, because sometimes you have to mix by volume and sometimes you have to mix by weight, and if you do the other way around than it's supposed to be, then you might end up with sticky resin or resin that doesn't cure properly. So you really have to make sure that you mix truly, and sometimes that's enough for good looking resin, but some of them, just no matter how good you mix or how slow you mix, you still have a lot of bubbles, especially when it sits there for a little while. So the best way to counteract that is to have a pot of warm water and another like cup with resin on top of it, so like a warm bath, like how you melt chocolate in the stove, so that the resin like heats up, but like not super hot water, because the hotter the temperature is, the faster the resin will cure, but just like warm water really helps the bubbles to just disappear. Another nice tip that I have that I learned also the hard way is that sometimes the resin, even though you mix it for a really long time, it doesn't mix very well because the bottom part stays in the bottom. So a few resins is really useful if you just like repot it, so you mix it a little bit on one cup and then you transfer to another cup, and then it will kind of mix better, and sometimes that helps with that extra resin in the bottom of the first pot to mix properly. And if you do that, you also have to be careful not to dump the resin too fast or like in the middle of the cup, otherwise bubbles might form. You can like tilt the cup and like dump it in the wall of the cup, so like it doesn't go directly into the resin itself, and that usually really helps with the bubbles. Another big tip that is overlooked by a lot of people is where you store your resin. It's really important to store it in a place where the temperature is appropriate. Usually in the instructions it will say at what temperature you should store it, so it shouldn't be too warm and it also shouldn't be too cold, because if it's too cold the resin will kind of solidify, and you can fix that by doing a warm bath like I mentioned before on the resin, then it will go back to normal. Something you should keep in mind as well if you're starting out is to like start small with small projects, because if you go all in and make a big project or mix a lot of resin and then you realize that you don't really know the technique well, then it might end up not as you wish, and then you will have wasted a lot of resin and a lot of money. So it's good to start small and slowly so you get the hang of how it works and trying new techniques out, and then you will improve. And on that note, you should always look in the instructions what is the recommended amount that you should mix, if there is one, because, and be really careful if you mix too much, because the more resin you mix, the faster the reaction will be. So it could be that the resin heats up really fast and you can't hold a cup because it's so hot, or it melts the cup, or it solidifies into a block before you can pour it. So make sure that you don't pour too much at once. For the materials of mixing, I usually use like wooden sticks to mix, and I just set them aside in like a silicone mat, and then after they're cured you can just use them again, and you can use them many times before you have to throw them away. And I do the same thing for the cups. I use plastic cups, and after the resin cures you can just use it again, and I use the same plastic cup for a really long time because it cures, so you can use it again, and you can use the same cup or the same set of cups for a really long time. Something else to keep in mind is that you can usually demold your piece after 24 hours or even 48 hours. The smaller the piece, the longer it will take. So for example, smaller earrings, like thin earrings, will probably take 1 to 2 days, and it actually takes a whole week usually, or at least a few days for it to be like fully cured. So after 24 or 48 hours you can take it out of the mold, but you have to be really careful not to spill water or any liquids on it, or not to touch it too much, because you might leave your fingerprints on it, or if you spill water on it, it can get a little foggy. So this was it for today. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a like on the video to support my channel. All my other socials are here on the screen or down below, and see you next time.